Visit any caregiver support forum either online or in person, and you're going to hear from family caregivers who are struggling with gathering support from key people around them, or they're embroiled in disagreements about the plan of care or in a cold war of sorts with other family members. So what can caregivers do to get supports and more peaceful alliances? Well, if you're a family caregiver, either up close or from a distance, if you know a caregiver or if you work with caregivers, you're in the right place, because in this episode, we're going to consult an expert. So let's settle in and get ready to listen so that we can learn strategies to make caregiving easier. Welcome, I'm Dr. Corbell Arps. I'm your host for the Caregivers Careport, where we delve into and problem solve the often unspoken world of family caregiving and the profound impact that caregiving has on the health of caregivers. And in this episode, we're going to shine a spotlight on the challenges that family caregivers face in gathering supports and dealing with those who disagree about how care is being provided. But we're not just going to focus on the existence of the problems. We're going to look at solutions. And today we have as a guest Bill Cohen. Bill is a caregiving support consultant, a certified senior advisor, and a trained elder mediator. And he owns Cohen Caregiving Support Consultants, LLC. Bill was the caregiver for his mother who had Alzheimer's, and he's now a tireless champion for caregivers. He came out of retirement and has dedicated his encore career to helping caregivers gather needed supports, services, and care plans. And he also helps caregivers and their families resolve disputes about care so that they can enjoy a more amiable and caring future. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor. I couldn't have said that better myself.
Well, it's really a pleasure to have you here, and I'm sure that you'll be able to really help us know additional resources that are available for caregivers who are struggling. And in this day and age, even with modern communications, it's sometimes so difficult to know what's out there. We know what hurts and we know what we're struggling with, but how do we get some resolution and help for it? So educate us here. What is it exactly that you do?
Okay. So what I like to say first is that you mentioned about my journey with my mother, that if you had told me about 20 years ago what was going to transpire and what was going to happen with my mom, including losing her home in Hurricane Katrina, getting Alzheimer's disease and moving out to Oregon from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and I was going to be doing what I do today and talking to you today, I'd say you're crazy. You couldn't make up that scenario. So when that first happened, those early chain of events, I found that support was sorely lacking. Information was lacking. A lot of misinformation out there that hasn't improved much. I hear this from my clients and my support groups as well. And so what I try to do is fill a gap, because rightly so, most of the emphasis is on the person with the disease. They can't take care of themselves. They may not be able to make their own decisions. But who says to the caregiver or asks them, what support do you need? What resources do you need? How can I help you? And like I said, that has been sorely lacking for as long as I know it and hasn't improved much today. There is a lot more information on the internet now. There are guides and directories, things like that, but you have to be careful. How do you know who to trust and work with and collaborate with for your loved one with dementia? And there's a lot of misinformation, like I said. So what I do is I provide advice, support, resources, referrals, help them care for their loved one, manage the care, but also practice self-care and prevention for themselves, because self-care is so important. We don't want you to get sick or burned out yourself from trying to take care of them. But a lot of it is collaborating with your care team. putting them together, coordinating it so you have a good care plan. And you probably have to have not only plan A, but plan B and C, because stuff happens, unfortunately, and things change. It's not a static situation. And sometimes it's a short journey, sometimes it's a real long one. Mine was about 10 years. So I try to fill that gap. Uh, I needed somebody like me, and I didn't exist.
Mm-hmm. So, Bill, what are the most common issues and problems that people come to you seeking help?
A lot of it is that we should have probably done something sooner. People are in denial, or they say that their loved one's okay, or they're just getting older or tired. We felt a little bit that way ourselves uh, before mom got worse, and not taking the steps to take care of their loved one, have the proper legal documents in place, make sure they're safe, make sure that they're getting good care, preferably in their own home for as long as possible. That's what we all want to do, age in place. But uh, it's also the timing. Is it too soon to do something? Am I too late? Very rarely is it Goldilocks just right. We all make the best decisions we can with the information at hand and advice from professionals like ourselves. But that's easier said than done. And I tell people, if you felt like you should have done it sooner, don't kick yourself. Don't feel guilty. You're doing the best you can. And because there's an increasing amount of information, like I said, whether it's from a source like the Alzheimer's Association or other aging services in your community, but it's hard to find those. And I hear from people all the time, and this is what I try to fill in, that from like the medical profession, where's the plan? Where's the treatment? If they even get a diagnosis, where's the pamphlet? What am I do now? And they felt, like I said, they feel let down.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So you kind of fill that gap between a diagnosis or the recognition that, yes, we have a problem here, and having a plan to follow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And be proactive rather
Mm-hmm.
than reactive in a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
With the latter, it's more emotional. You have fewer options.
Yeah. So what are the steps a person can follow to be proactive and kind of ahead of the game rather than playing catch up?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, first, family should talk about it. Don't shove it under the rug, delay, kick the can down the road, so to speak. Talk about their loved one and decide, are they okay in their home? Are they safe? Are they happiest there? But again, make sure legal documents are in place while the person can still sign them if they haven't already, such as power of attorney and the advance directive or health representative. Because if you don't have those, you can't advocate for them. You can't speak for them. You may not be able to even talk to the doctors or other professionals. So those are probably the first things, as well as again making sure that they are safe and take it from there. But I have the discussions with your family. It can be individually. But the only benefit to being an only child and maybe no family around is you don't have to get anybody else's opinion. You can give your information to decide yourself. Because then we get into family dynamics and past situations, and we all have hybrid families. We have people spread all over the family. Who's going to take care of mom or dad or both? It often falls upon a female in the family, but not always. Men are increasingly stepping into that role. And whether they are there in the local area or they are remote, everybody can pitch in. They can do the hands-on. They can order things like prescriptions. They can do the finances. They can come in occasionally and give respite, but put together the care team so that it isn't one person being overburdened with all of it, right? We actually went from everybody helping out right after the hurricane disaster to kind of sequential tag team. We took turns, and then mom came out here, and then it was primarily me with a little bit of support. So everybody's a little bit different, and support doesn't necessarily have to be just from your family. You can reach out to your neighbors, your friends, ex-coworkers, your charitable organizations, religious or otherwise, and put together your care team and a care plan so that you are, again, being proactive.
Mm-hmm. And Bill is caregiving support consultant. Um, that's a profession and a certification. Would that be one that people could search out online or in their community to find the help for that?
Exactly. However, with that in mind, very few people are doing exactly what I do. More people are, for instance, the geriatric or aging life care managers, that they're more of the medical people and the social work people, right? And then you have other people who are more dementia trainers or how to care for their loved one, the actual care in the home or the care facility. So I'm more of an umbrella. There's three things. I'll be very simple. There's three things that I don't do. Don't practice law. I don't give specific financial advice, although I used to be in the industry and I can talk the language and say interpret a long-term care policy for them. And I don't do hands-on caregiving. However, with the latter in mind, I spend time sometimes with the person with dementia, someone to talk to, somebody to keep them comfortable, that type of thing, and maybe be eyes and ears for the family who may not be in the area or can't visit mom or dad as often. But everything else is on the table. I can attend your care conference with the care facility if you'd like. Like I said, I can be the companion as well. I don't drive because that means you have to be licensed, spotted, and insured. But I'll give you an example. There was a lady from Chicago, a daughter. Her father was in a care facility, a care home here in the Portland area. He was a real extrovert driver type. And he was trying to exit seek and go back to his old job. He was missing people to talk to because nobody else in the care home was conversant. So I did a couple of things. One, working with the other professionals, a music therapist, a pet therapist, the caregivers there at the home to keep him more occupied and engaged. I would walk with him and talk with him, things like that. But to get him to settle down about going back to his old workplace, I did a couple of things. I have a term I call compassionate deception. I made him think that he had a job with me. I made cards that looked like mine with his picture on it, his title, and his name on it, and say, here's your job. And I would give him things like invoices and purchase orders to do. Didn't matter how he did them. I didn't correct him. Hey, that's great. That's perfect. The client will be very happy. And then his daughter would send me extra compensation to hand it to him in an envelope. Here's your pay. So he thought he had a job. I also did one little tricky thing at the place he used to work. I took a photo of the sign, photoshopped. I'm not very good at it, but I did pretty well. Closed, and said, well, they closed up because of the pandemic. No need to go there. So he settled down and didn't have a reason. And the daughter was really appreciative because he would call her constantly, and you're not going to believe her job in Chicago. She worked for 911.
Oh my.
So you can imagine her stress level.
So, Bill, that's a beautiful example on so many levels because it met his need, it met him where he was, but also for his daughter, the peace of mind that she could get knowing that you were filling in a gap that she couldn't provide for him. And especially with her trying to be a caregiver from a distance.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
So,
And then one point is that caregiving in the same area and caregiving long distance, they're not necessarily easier or harder, better or worse. It's just different. You have a different emphasis. I did both, and it was just as hard from a distance as here in town.
mhm, yeah.
You're always like
Bill,
that.
Bill, as I think about kind of your your steps for what to do when people are getting kind of in action mode of caregiving, and navigating all of those different jobs, like getting the legal documents in place, starting to investigate what services are available. Um, it sounds straightforward and easy, but I imagine that we have a lot of listeners who know that there's some pitfalls, they're kind of potholes in the road where they can, have a pretty jarring experience in the reality of trying to get things done. In your experience, where are the pitfalls and how do you resolve them?
So yeah, you can think about all the different hats that a caregiver wears: cook and the accountant and the nurse and everything else. They do a lot of things. Biggest problem is trying to do it all by yourself, all at once, without trying to get support, get help. Or, as I used to say about when I was dealing with mom, and I suggest this to people, is you basically have to go into triage mode. Basically say, this is the most important thing. I got to handle this now. This will be next. And then everything else will have to wait in terms of priority. And I needed to do that because I was handling all the things, not just her care and making sure she was okay, but her taxes, her real estate, her insurance, the finances, everything. So
Mm-hmm.
it was overwhelming. I still don't know how I got through it.
Mm-hmm. So it was just important to prioritize, and not try to do it all at once, as you said. Yeah. What about for people who really um, can't seem to gather their resources, not just in agencies or people outside the family, but within their own families?
Oh, getting resources from their own families?
The support. Uh,
Well, first again, I'll go back to, yeah, support. Family can be however you define it, and it can be from various sources. But uh, talking to family members that know they don't have to do the hands-on necessarily, but they can take on various tasks, and just being, instead of saying, can you help me with this or can you do this, said, hey, I have this issue. Can you help handle this task? Can you just make some phone calls for me? I'll give you a quick story. A couple siblings had taking care of their mom. They had one other sibling, and they said, she doesn't help, but she says, but I don't know what's going on. I said, well, here's two things. One, keep her in the loop, keep her informed. She can't say that you're not telling her, but give her a simple task that she can do and see how she responds. I said, for example, you're setting up appointments for elder law attorneys. Ask her to just schedule the appointments. That's all. Make those phone calls, schedule them. And they said, oh, she won't do that. Well, just let's give it a try. A few days later, they came back. She did it. We were surprised. She wanted to help, and that was a simple thing they could do. And it might be that the next time you can come up with something else you can help. That's one less thing that a family member has to do. So it's just I think it's a way of how you frame it, encourage, ask for the support. Sometimes you may have to be a little more forceful and say, I am burning out. I am exhausted. I am sick. I need a few days off. I need a couple weeks vacation. You need to come in and take care of mom or whoever. And sometimes that's what it takes. Because again, if the caregiver gets sick, they're going to have to step in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if they don't take care of themselves, they're not helping anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so keeping the communication loops moving, and being very direct and honest about what you need.
Instead of saying, I'm okay, I can handle it, that type of thing. I always think about one client where he was trying to take care of his wife, who was a gerontologist. She actually subbed up my initial support group that I attended, and she didn't want to be recognized by a caregiver coming into the house or going to a care facility. They might recognize her. So he was protecting her, and he was getting really exhausted. And so I say, I've got some blunt questions for you. I said, are you the only one who can handle it? Will you not admit that nobody else can do it? That somebody else can do it? Are you in denial? Do you have control issues? He said all the above. So he did then bring in his son and daughter-in-law, maid to help coordinate things and bring in some care. And he got through it a lot better than he was doing. That might have been a twofold sad story there.
Mm-hmm. What recommendations do you have for people who are, for caregivers who are kind of suffering from criticism by their family members or a real disagreement in the kind of care, about the kind of care that they're giving?
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you, I'll handle that in two ways. One is, I mentioned about the collaborative, the teamwork, and the solitary caregiver. Then you have they call the uneasy alliance, or the observing. And some people will have unsolicited advice and uninformed advice. So I
Well,
usually have a
I'm
couple.
sure that, yeah, I'm sure we have listeners who experience that. So I'm all ears to hear what you
Okay.
have to say about this.
So first, I have two pieces of advice on how to handle that. The first way is, if they suggest something, is say, that's a great idea. Why don't you take that on? You'll get one of two responses, which are both in your favor. One, they'll either shut up, or two, they'll come and do it. They will help. The other is, especially if it's uninformed or misguided or not in the best interest of your loved one, is say, that's an interesting idea. I'll consider it, and then ignore it. You have that right, especially if you are the caregiver, you're the one with power of attorney. So keep that in mind. But if you get into a situation where you're getting people are challenging you, constantly criticizing, like you suggest, this is where somebody like a trained elder mediator can come in and help a family that's at an impasse. They're at odds, can't come to an agreement on who, where, and how, and why a loved one should be taken care of. And I don't make the decision for them, but I keep them talking, and I help them come to an agreement that they can all live with. I do make clear, two things. It can't stay out of the courts and avoid high lawyer fees. I'm like at least half the cost of an attorney, and I don't bill as many hours. So we go from there. And the other thing is, I tell them, I'm not a therapist, so I can't fix your family problems or issues or dynamics, but I can at least keep you talking. I remember one case where it was four siblings split down the middle, and they were at an impasse, and one of them said in one of the meetings, well, at least we're not yelling at each other. That was a win.
Yeah, it's a win. Yeah. So what are the steps you go through to help people get resolution of these differences?
So the first thing is it's similar to when I work with people for caregiving consulting, is to sit and ask a lot of questions, do a lot of listening, and find out what's on their minds. What are their primary issues? What are their main concerns? Same with a mediation case, that I will meet with them first, probably as a group, to get a feel for the overall situation. I tend to schedule individual conversations to hear their side of it, what they'd like to see as an outcome, if they have ideas on how they can resolve it. And after I've taken it all in, then get the group back together and said, this is what we're hearing. These are the main concerns. Here are some options. Let's talk about it, and make sure that when each person is talking, this is where a forum like Zoom can work well, where I can keep people on mute, allow everybody to talk without interruption.
That's an accomplishment, and I like how you give everyone a voice. So everyone's at the table, and then you come together. And then what happens after you've given some options? Where do you go after that?
And it may take more than one or two sessions. It'd be great if we can do it in one or two, or that. How does that sound to people? They may take a vote. I may say, we have some options. We can vote on it right now, or you can think about it. We can come back in a week or two and decide then. And if you have any concerns or other ideas in the interim, please let me know, because people can talk to me individually as well. Whatever is said individually is kept confidential and private. I may say, one of you said such and such. I mean, they'll know who they are. But yeah, we keep it that way because we don't want to get personalities and family relationships involved more than they have to be. Some families are better than others. Some have more issues than others, of course. We know that. And sometimes it's interesting that because of maybe a death in the family or some new issues, that some old dynamics, old issues come to the forefront that have been simmering underneath. Yeah, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And what do you see as the result of once those issues are kind of brought out into the open?
Well, it can be different ways. I'm going to think back to that other case I was just talking about by the four siblings. At one point, in fact, it was the person that hired me. He says, I'm not happy right now. I'm going off camera and I'm going mute, but I'll be listening. And things can sometimes fall apart. And fortunately, we kept talking. We had a couple more sessions. Uh, and that's the most important thing is look for that common ground, find something that everybody can live with or feel good about, even if it's not exactly what they wanted. In that family's case, two of the siblings were not happy about the outcome, but they could live with it. The mom moved to one of the other siblings for care and using a adult day program and things like that. So the guy who hired me, for instance, was not happy with the outcome, but he wrote me a glowing testimonial because it did what they wanted to do, what they needed to have happen, that an outside, neutral, objective party helped them make a decision.
Mm-hmm. And I love what you said about finding common ground, because those situations are usually going to be such that no one's going to get everything their way, and no one's going to, but everybody will probably find something that they can agree with. Um, and then I
Especially if
think,
they keep focused, if they keep focused on the welfare of the person they're caring for.
oh,
It's
that's so key. Yeah.
not necessarily about the individuals who are trying to make a decision. It's who benefits the most, the loved one with dementia or other condition.
That's beautifully said because I think when the focus is kept on the one you're trying to really help, um, then those kind of personal, maybe old power struggles and who has more control, um, can be set aside and then I'm just wondering for these families, the experience of coming together, even though you're probably all upset and even though you disagree and you have to work to find common ground, just the process of doing that together is very affirming, and high functioning rather than just kind of having it out with each other and not getting anything resolved.
If I could tell you a quick little background about me and how I got into it, and how I like to describe a good metaphor analogy, is that I was always kind of like the peacemaker in my family. On more than one or two occasions, I was the one who was trying to get everybody to talk and not be at odds with each other. And later on, I facilitated meetings at work. I facilitated the support group, and I'm still facilitating the same group 18 years later.
You're
And I'm
busy,
finding
busy
myself
man.
increasingly in that role to helping people come to a decision, because some families can't decide on ordering pizza, let alone taking care of who should take care of the loved one and
Yeah.
how.
Bill, I find that really interesting, and I think it speaks to one of the main tenets in health coaching is that you try to play to your strengths. And so a lot of times in families, different family members will have different strengths. And it's so important that each person do what they do well, which may be something that's like more legal or accounting, the bookkeeping, rather than the hands-on care. There may be someone else who's very much into caretaking.
Mhm.
And
They may have a nursing background or whatever.
right.
Mhm.
And to let people shine where their own personal strengths are.
And that's part of putting together a team, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's going to be the quarterback or the tight end, right?
Right. And that takes it so much out of the realm of just power control, who's most important, who's running things, and really working collaboratively to get a good outcome for your loved one. Yeah. So, Bill, how can people contact you if they're interested in working with you personally?
Mhm. So my website is one good way, and that is Cohen, like my last name, Cohen, Cohen Caregiving Support.com. And I provided you with my link tree, which provides a lot of things like my podcast interviews, my Facebook group, which is supporting dementia caregivers, and various other links that might be helpful.
Okay, that's great. And we'll put your links at the bottom of our page. And Bill, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your work helping caregivers get supports and resolving their conflicts in their care plans. If you would like to contact Bill or find out more about his work, his links are below. And if you would like a complimentary 30-minute session one-to-one with me to ask a question or get other resources for your well-being as a caregiver, or if you would just like to find out more about health coaching with me, my links are below. Also, this podcast is for you, and I would love to hear from you about what you would like for us to cover. You can leave a voicemail for me through the SpeakPipe link below. And don't be shy. The more we hear from you, the better we can meet your needs. I hope you'll join us for our next episode on the Caregivers Careport. And until then, take care.